Here are my top 10 ideas for teaching ESL or EFL to beginners. Number 1 is build confidence. If someone is a beginner in a new language, chances are they are not confident. They feel nervous, kind of unsure, uncertain, and they really don't know how to communicate in English. So your main job is to build confidence, and hopefully students will leave your class with kind of a willingness to speak and some confidence to be able to do so. Number 2 is focus on vocabulary. So studies kind of show that you need to know around 1,000 words to kind of be able to have a kind of basic conversation in another language with somebody. So if you can help students get to those first 1,000 words in your class, you've done a good job. I'm sure you've had this experience in studying a language yourself. You know what you want to say, you can kind of maybe put the grammar together in a little sentence, but you just don't know the 1 or 2 keywords. So help students get there by focusing on vocabulary with beginners. Number 3 is teach reading skills. Reading skills are key because this enables students to kind of do some self-study at home. Of course, they can watch videos or they can listen to podcasts, that kind of thing. But if they want to learn vocabulary, if they want to use a textbook, if they want to kind of dive deep into grammar, they need to be able to read well. So spend some time focusing on English reading skills with beginners. The 4th tip for teaching beginners is to focus on student talking time, as opposed to teacher talking time. You as the teacher are probably already quite good at English. You really don't need to practice. It's your students who need to do the speaking. So whatever you do, put students into pairs, into small groups, but think about how they can be talking and doing as much in English for most of the class as much as you can. If you do that, you'll go a long way to really helping your students. The 5th tip is to use questions and answers. So in many English classes for beginners, it's often like the teacher asks questions and the students answer questions. What's your name? My name is Tim. How old are you? I'm 7 years old. Where are you from? I'm from Busan. And the teacher just does questions, students do answers, but also get students to ask you questions back. Conversation is a two-way street. Both people need to be asking questions and answers. So get started with this early in your classes. The 6th tip for teaching beginners is to teach follow-up questions. So use the 5 W's and the H, who, what, when, why, where, and how. And then each question that I get my students to ask their partner, I always require them to do a follow-up question. For example, if they are asking someone, what's your favorite food? Someone says, my favorite food is pizza. I would make them ask a follow-up question. For example, what kind of pizza? How often do you eat pizza? That kind of thing. So this is just a habit that I get my students into, always asking a follow-up question. The 7th tip for teaching beginners is to focus on classroom language. So I teach my students things like, may I go to the bathroom? Can I borrow a pencil? What page? What number? That kind of thing, just so we're able to communicate effectively in class. Number 8 is to mix it up a little bit. So I like to put students in different pairs and different groups for each class, because maybe you've had this experience before. You're partnered with someone who's either way better at English or way better at another language, or way worse than you. Either case, it can be boring. It's a bit of a struggle. So I like to kind of mix it up. Sometimes students will be with someone at their level. Sometimes the person will be a bit better, sometimes a bit worse. But then it's not like the same person is stuck with the worst student in the class or with the best student in the class who's maybe like studied abroad somewhere or something like that. So mix it up and just kind of keep things fresh and interesting in your class. The 9th tip for teaching beginners is to review. So I would way rather my students know a few things very well and they kind of take it away from my class and they will never forget it. So this could be vocabulary or some grammar concepts, as opposed to just like powering through a textbook in its entirety and students kind of half know a million things, but they can't actually have anything that they know, kind of at the level of just like automatic inside their brain. They can just reproduce it easily without even thinking. So if you have a choice between kind of covering a lot, not that well, or covering a few things well, I would cover a few things well. And do review at the end of class, do review at the beginning of class. I always have review days before my midterm and final exams. And yeah, just review as much as possible, especially with beginners. The 10th tip is to give very simple instructions. So the challenge should be the English, not in understanding the instructions to an activity or game that you're doing. So I also use ICQs, which are instruction checking questions. And so then I ask students some very simple questions about the instructions that I've given. So for example, how many people on your team? 3. How long do you have? 5 minutes. What page? Page 17. What do you need? A pen and paper. So don't forget about ICQs. So if you like these tips for teaching English to beginners, please be sure to check out my book, ESL, EFL, Teaching Practice and Methodology. Also hit like, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.